Oh, I think I'm going live. This is a bit weird because I'm trying to go live on Instagram and it's also saying I've got poor connection. So I'm just checking my connection on there. No, it should be fine. So excuse me while I just make sure that everything's up and running. Hopefully this is working. Otherwise on Instagram I'll have to do it slightly separate. I'm just seeing, I don't know whether you can hear me okay or not. We'll just wait and see. Let me just try and redo the live chat on Instagram. And then I'll switch to 4G. Bear with me. Okay, great. So now I can see that the Instagram isn't working. I'm just going to hold on a second. Text. Right, I'm just texting Shadi to see if I can try and get this sorted on the Instagram, and if not, we're going to. Sorry, I'm just trying to sort that. Bear with me. Sorry about this. Okay, fine. Apparently I am live on Instagram. It just keeps on popping up saying poor connection. Thanks for coming to this. This is a bit odd because I feel like I'm just talking to the abyss. But we'll see. Oh, apparently there's no image on Instagram, but I'm not sure what to do there because I've got Wi-Fi. Okay, fine. I'll just carry on with Facebook. So if you are on Instagram and you can only hear me, if you go to the King's Head Theatre Instagram and Facebook page, then apparently the images is working there totally fine. So I'll just try and not be totally flustered. My name is Kate. I'm Kate Lane. I guess I would describe what I do as a sonographer and an artist making performances. I think that's probably suitably vague because what I do is kind of quite varied. I would try and say I'm also an academic. I'm the course leader of the BA in Performance Design and Practice at Central St Martin's. But today I'm the co-artistic director. Today I'm talking as the co-artistic director of Performance Collective Brave New Worlds. I should also say I've just had a baby. I've literally just had a 1-month-old baby. So if you hear squawking or crying in the background, that is a small baby and not some sort of dinosaur, because at the moment we're talking about her being in the Jurassic period, because that's the sound that she makes. So I'm the co-artistic director of Brave New Worlds alongside Italian theatre maker Valentina Ceschi, who is who was also the artistic director of Dancing Brick Company, and a Lithuanian designer and artist, Guada Yarasvisiute. So I guess I should just sort of talk about like how I got to where I am and how I got to forming Brave New Worlds. I have to admit and say that I was never somebody who loved theatre from the little, from a little kid. I never really went to theatre. It wasn't really a thing my family did, or it wasn't really on my radar at all. Though I was in a contemporary dance group when I was a teenager. So actually I started off doing a BA in sculpture, where that was when I first discovered sort of performance art, which is where my love of sort of performance comes from. And at the same time I was live video ended. And at the same time sorry, I'm getting distracted by trying to sort out some technology. At the same time, I was a cabaret performer. We had a rowdy bunch of women. We formed a can-can troupe and went off parading around the world, doing performances. So I had this sort of dual sort of personality. One side studying sculpture and doing, quite serious performance art. Well, it wasn't that serious. And then the other side was being a rowdy can-can performer. And then after I had my daughter straight after my oldest daughter, straight after I did my degree, and I went and did an MA in costume for performance. So after a few years of sort of freelancing as a costume designer in theatre, I think I was getting quite frustrated with the type of work that I was doing. And I wanted to make, I guess, more sort of performance art, visually arresting sort of work, and I realized that if I wanted to do that sort of work, I would have to be the person making it or directing it, and so that's when I started sort of thinking about sort of pushing in that direction, and at the same time I met my collaborator Valentina Chesky. I met her at a Young Vic Director Designers networking event, and then we met again at a Devoted and Disgruntled conference talk. I don't know quite how to describe them, and so we met there and we started sort of talking, realised we were really on the same sort of page and that perhaps we'd like to make some work together, and then a little bit later Valentina met Guada and brought her on board. I should also say, if there's any questions, please just add any questions or anything like that. Please go ahead and say that. So I think the thing that sort of joined all of our sort of thinking was that we really believe that performance and theatre is led visually, or should be led visually. I mean, I always say, we remember what something looks like in a piece more than you remember that line in Act 5, Scene 2, blah, blah, blah. That line, you go, oh, that looked really amazing. And actually what happens when you start making performances with the visual as the starting point, as the catalyst, and use that as the dramaturgy in a production. And the other thing that really connected us was this idea of costume-led performance and what we can sort of learn from that, how actually the performance starts with the body in space, and how a performance can start with the costumed body as the starting point. So the work that we make with Brave New Worlds is really a cross between live art, performance, dance, theatre. Is often without words, and often without set. So it is mainly just the costume bodied, which does make it rather tricky to program in festivals. We've found out, because nobody knows quite where to sort of fit it. One of the things I was asked about was, what does my day-to-day life look like? well, at the moment I'm on maternity leave, so that's putting aside. And my day-to-day life doesn't really have a set pattern. Obviously, during term time, I'm mainly focused on running the BA at CSM, which takes up obviously a lot of my time. Um, and I still do the occasional design for theatre as a designer, mainly opera recently. In fact, I had a touring opera with ETO, one of the school's operas, which obviously got cancelled because of COVID. Um, but yeah, so I still do occasional design. Actually, I think that's where my experience of the King's Head comes in. I think I've designed 4 operas at the King's Head. I think the last one was, I can't remember if it was the Elixir of Love or it was Dido. Either one of those, I can't remember which came before or after. It was a few years ago. So that was the last time last time I designed at the King's Head. And actually, the last thing I saw at the King's Head, I have to say, was the Panto. It was a child's school opera, which was brilliant, which is always brilliant. So actually going back to Brave New Worlds. So actually with Brave New Worlds, when we're working together, one, we're often in different countries. So when we actually meet, we tend to meet on Skype, although recently we've done Zoom calls because everybody seems to have switched over. So actually I've been working remotely this way for many years. I know that it's been a big adjustment for lots of people, but actually we're quite used to sort of creating seeds of productions via screens, which is why it's frustrating that I didn't get the Instagram live working just now. So we often work and we start talking about ideas sort of remotely, talking about concepts for productions, and start sort of gathering images and having sort of check-ins. And then the actual creative period is normally which we do on sort of intense residencies, either one residency or do a couple of residencies following each other. And that's mainly partly due to the fact that we all have live in different countries, and it's also we're all parents now, so it's easier to sort of balance childcare, sort of working remotely and then just coming together for short periods. But also it means that we have very busy lives elsewhere, so we're a very slow company when it comes to making productions. Often it takes us a couple of years to get something up and running. I should pause and say if there's any questions, just go ahead and pop them in. I'm looking in the comment section, but I haven't seen any. I'm just checking. Okay, so when we start a project, so I should say we start with sort of a concept and we find sort of visual references and research, and often the research, we sort of embrace tangents with research, and it can be quite broad and wide, but basically we just sort of create a sort of conceptual and visual bank of information. You kind of get like a flavour or the essence of what a piece would come from looking at our mood boards and research. And then from this, we actually then go straight into the constructing of the toile. So it's quite an unusual process. We don't then go and create drawings and go on a very sort of linear standard approach to costume design. For us, it's really about the materiality of the materiality of what we're constructing with, the sort of textures that are really important. Or it's about the shape, the architectural form, and I think that's probably where my sculptural background comes in, and Guada's visual artist background, and actually Valentina, I should also say, studied at Lecoq and did the LEM course as well, so her understanding of sort of architectural space on the body, so it's something we all sort of keep in common. So we start sort of constructing these forms. We actually don't call them costumes, we call them forms. And because we don't know how they're going to react with the body, we don't know how they're going to be worn on the body. So we'll try often lots of different ways of wearing something and look at something in terms of its movement quality and its sort of visual impact, and sometimes how it might interact with another sort of costume forms. So we sort of explore that in a very I guess experimental way. We're looking at things about how heavy a costume is, how light it is. So it's a kind of a mixture of looking at something in terms of sort of the Laban effort drive. So whether something's heavy or light or direct or indirect. I have to shout out to Joe Wild, who was the person who we worked with who first introduced us to Laban. And also looking at sort of a Lecoq methodology, in particular mask work, and how sort of costume forms are often worn as a sort of form of mask. And one of the things that we're really keen on is being truthful to a shape or a form. I know that sounds quite abstract, but it's not being forced. So we let the form or the costume lead the process, as opposed to having an idea about how something might move. And sometimes it's kind of counterintuitive. You look at something and you think, oh, that should shimmy, but actually the beauty or the artistry is actually in having something that looks like it should shimmy, keep straight. That does sound very abstract. So we start to sort of look at these sort of costume forms for the movement quality, and then we might storyboard. So we might actually have little drawings of this form and what it does in a space. And then from there, we'll get these sort of storyboard moments and start to sort of weave in and piece together how something will work in a sort of time linear framework. Often at that point as well, we'll invite a photographer to come in to photograph the work. We work with an amazing photographer called Camilla Greenwell as much as possible, who has just taken the most phenomenal photos of our work for years. But it really helps us in our process at this point to create a sort of visual documentation, a visual record of the work. So really, I was going to talk about Greenland. Has anybody got any more questions? No. Also, when we get to that point, we then sort of invite sound artists or other collaborators, lighting designers, to come in and help create the work from there, and sort of create a final piece. So the final thing I was going to talk about was actually our project Greenham last year, which was our first sort of venture in creating a site-specific outdoor piece. We were invited to on a seabed residency by Bill G and Simon Chatterton at 101 Outdoor Arts, which is this amazing artist space just by Greenland Common, which is created for outdoor work, and it's this huge space and live-in residency. So we had 2 weeks there last summer, and we had quite a busy 2 weeks there, and we decided it was supposed to be for sort of exploring and ideas, but actually one of the things is that we didn't know how our work would translate to an outdoor environment, so we moved it to so we created it outside and very much had an audience. We felt they needed an audience to really do it, so we ended up creating a performance. Sorry, that was a bit waffly. So we ended up working with a sound designer, sound artist called Caroline Devine, who is amazing. Athena Stevens, who's actually more known as a writer, but we brought her on as a dramaturg because she's brilliant writer and brilliant dramaturg. And actually, it was a bit of a challenge because she normally deals with words, but actually it kind of made sense for us because we wanted our visual images to have the quality that something would have with words. So actually having her as a dramaturg was brilliant in sort of just being very straightforward and being like, that doesn't make any sense. And then we had Josephina Frey, Jen Fletcher, and Natalie Nicole James as performers. An amazing assistant designer as well, Sonia Adira. So we started working on this piece, which is part of this sort of Women in Power series, and we were really inspired by both the peace camps, women's peace camps that were there at Greenland from the 80s all the way up. They were there for 20 years. Partly that was due to the fact that I was taken there to the peace camps when I was a kid by my mum, although I was too small to remember any of it. But I've always known about Greenland and felt I had this connection even though I was too little. And it's funny because I was speaking to other friends who were also there when they were kids, and realised that we must have actually probably played together or met or somehow, but obviously don't remember any of that. So anyway, and also partly we started researching about Greenland Common was this long history of the Common, of this interesting history between it being reclaimed by nature and being used for military. Right back into the Battle of Culloden, actually, the British military gathered on Greenham Common before they marched up north to wipe out Bonnie Prince Charles troops. So right back to the Battle of Culloden, it's been used as a sort of military base and then reclaimed back as common land. So we created a site-specific performance, and one of the things that we started talking about, which is was actually the thing about site-specific and live performances is that it's not very it doesn't really allow for a wider audience, and you have to be able to have access to it. And so we were wondering about how we created sort of a memory of the performance which is true to the performance. So this is where we started talking about this idea of performance echoes, which now kind of feel really, really relevant because we can't see live performance now. We can only get these memories, these echoes. And actually, I don't know if anybody else has felt frustrated, but often watching live performance, recordings of live performance, for me just doesn't feel has the same sort of essence to it. So the two things that we looked at creating was first this live sort of these short films, which are normal films, but for 1 minute long, which are just sort of moments, memories of a performance, and so they're not true to the performance, they're just sort of capturing elements of the performance, I guess is the best way to describe it. And we've just put them out. They're actually on our Instagram page. There's a link to them. They're on our website. And then the second one, which we're about to put out this week, is a 360 VR version. And I think for me, the 360 is a real way of capturing the live performance, because you are physically immersed in the space when you put the headset on. And we're just going to design so you can just have the Google card. You can get them off Amazon. They're really cheap. So you can just sort of put it on your phone, put it on, and be immersed in the space. Again, we filmed the performance for the 360, so it's a slight sort of blocking in the shapes of the performances designed so that you are fully immersed. So it's not as if you're an audience watching the performance. It's as if you are submerged within the performance. But that's how I feel like when we watch live performances, we don't see ourselves as just outside the performance, watching in, which is what you do when you watch a recording of a live performance. You really see yourself as being immersed and submerged within the performance, if that makes sense. You almost put yourself on the stage or within the stage, or gets transported. And I think that's that beautiful sort of suspension of disbelief that we have when we watch live performances. I've only got 5 minutes left, so I realise that I've just sort of waffled on. So if there's any remaining questions, please do ask. I'm just seeing. No? Okay. So yeah, I guess we can talk about. So we're just trying this experiment really to see which sort of performance echoes are sort of more responsive, whether the 360 feels more true to the live performance or these short films. I think the short films are something we've done before with our first piece production we did, Utopia, and we created these sort of character analysis um, of character analysis of the performance of creatures within the performance, and I think these ones for Greenham are kind of along the same lines. Um, yeah, I don't know. So any more questions, because we're almost at the end, and I should just really say I apologise to anybody who was trying to get on Instagram. I don't know why the connection just was not working, and I kept on clocking up. I should also say that so I was really thankful for King's Head to have invited me to talk, to excuse my sort of waffling. It's quite hard to sort of talk to the abyss in a quite an informal way. And I'm just sort of like treading water until the end. So I should say that we've got an Instagram page. Brave New Worlds have an Instagram page and a Facebook page. So you can clock onto them to find the links to the short films for Greenham. I'm going to be putting up the 360 shortly later, either today or tomorrow, on the Instagram, on our Instagram, just so we can get a link to it. You don't need to have headsets to watch it. You can just move your phone around and sort of be submerged in it. And also the voices. I haven't mentioned Caroline's amazing sound. She went and interviewed lots of women who were part of the peace camps. And so there's the voices of these women telling their stories against our sort of quite abstracted costume forms, which are very much inspired by military and nature, and that relationship that this land as common had between the military and its history of the military, and it being first an RAF base and then an American Army base, and also how the land has reclaimed it. And there's still sort of semblances of parts of the military infrastructure still on Greenham Common, but there's a small bit of the runway still there, for example. So there's, and then the rest of the sounds, so it's the sounds of the women's voices talking about the like their stories, and then the other sounds are the sounds of the common. She'd went and recorded the common live and sort of interwoven that. So I just want to say thank you everybody for joining. Reminding that the King's Head Theatre Online is twice a week at 1 o'clock live on Facebook and Instagram. Again, I'm really sorry for not getting Instagram working. And you can watch previous King's Head Theatre Online sessions on the King's Head blog and YouTube channel and IGTV on Instagram, although not my one because I didn't get it working. So my apologies about that, and thank you so much for joining. Okay, take care. Bye bye.